Hi everyone, and welcome back to my nightstand horror hour with your friendly Ewish, the Wicked Witch of the Web. I am back, finally, with the final chapters of Monster Blood here before we get into October. This will probably come out on October 1st, I think, and then through October I want to read my favorite Halloween one, which is Attack of the Jack-o'-lanterns. I normally read that every year, like on Halloween night, but because I'm doing this now, yay, I'm gonna film it throughout October so you guys can read it with me. Couple little things going on today. I have brought as little special guests 2 of my haunted dolls. I actually have 14. I have psychic friends from around the world who go to various locations and have sent me dolls from those locations that supposedly have spirits in them. Yes, I have experiences. Yes, I've got stories for another time, but these are the 2 I connect with the most. I've got Angel down there, and in the back, in the little blue dress, that's Cecilia, so keep an eye on them in case you see anything weird. If you see anything weird, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you see me bopping around as well, I do have some music playing. I am neurodivergent, so sometimes I just need a little extra something going on while I do tasks. I love this, but sometimes I just need a little something extra, right? So if you see me bopping and there's straight up no music going on, I'm not crazy. I'm just listening to my music. K-pop, by the way. Pew and Harmony, by the way. Anyways, without further ado, I'm starting on chapter 17 to the end of Monster Blood. Let's go. The brothers stepped out of the shadows of the hedge. Their short blonde hair caught the late afternoon sunlight. They were both grinning gleefully. Evan stood frozen in place, staring from one to the other. No one said a word. One of the Bamers grabbed the bucket from Evan's hand and tossed it to the ground. The bucket hit with a heavy thud, and its thick green contents oozed into the grass, making disgusting sucking sounds. "Hey," Evan cried, breaking the tense silence. He didn't have a chance to say more. The other twin punched him hard in the stomach. Evan felt the pain radiate through his body. The punch took his breath away. He gasped for air. He didn't see the next punch as it landed on his cheek just below his right eye. He howled in pain, and his hands flailed the air helplessly. Both brothers were hitting him now, and then one of them gave Evan's shoulder a hard shove, and he went sprawling onto the cool, damp grass. The pain swept over him, blanketing him, followed by a wave of nausea. He closed his eyes, gasping noisily, waiting for the sharp ache in his stomach to fade. The ground seemed to tilt. He reached out and grabbed it and held on tightly so he wouldn't fall off. When he finally managed to raise his head, Andy was standing over him, her eyes wide with alarm. "Evan," he groaned, and pushing with both hands, tried to sit up. The dizziness, the spinning, tilting grass forced him to lie back down. "Are they gone?" he asked, closing his eyes, willing the dizziness away. "Rick and Tony? I saw them run away," Andy said, kneeling beside him. "Are you okay? Should I call my mom?" He opened his eyes. "Yeah, no, I don't know." "What happened?" she demanded. He raised a hand to his cheek. Ow. It was already swollen, too painful to touch. "They beat you up?" "Either that or I was hit by a truck," he groaned. A few minutes later, it seemed like hours, he was back on his feet. Breathing normally, rubbing his swollen cheek. "I've never been in a fight before," he told Andy, shaking his head. "Never." "And it doesn't look like it was much of a fight," she said, her expression still tight with concern. He started to laugh, but it made his stomach hurt. "We'll pay them back," Andy said bitterly. "We'll find a way to pay them back, the creeps." "Oh, look, the monster blood," Evan hurried over to it. The bucket lay on its side. The green gunk had oozed onto the grass, forming a wide, thick puddle. "I'll help you get it back in the bucket," Andy said, leaning over to stand the bucket up. "Hope it doesn't kill the grass. My dad'll have a cow if his precious lawn is hurt." "It's so heavy," Evan said, groaning as he tried to push the glob into the bucket. "It doesn't want to move." "Let's try picking up handfuls," Andy suggested. "Whoa, it doesn't want to come apart," Evan said in surprise. "Look, it sticks together." "It's like taffy," Andy said. "Ever see them make taffy in those taffy machines? The stuff just sticks together in one big glob." "This isn't taffy," Evan muttered. "It's disgusting." Working together, they managed to lift the entire green ball and drop it into the bucket. The stuff made a sickening, sucking sound as it filled the bucket, and both Evan and Andy had trouble pulling their hands out of it. "It's so sticky," Andy said, making a disgusted face. "And warm," Evan added. He finally managed to free his hands from it. "It's like it's trying to swallow my hands," he said, wiping his hands on his t-shirt, sucking them in. "Take it home," Andy said. She looked up to the house to see her mother motioning to her from the front window. "Uh-oh, dinner time. I've got to go." Her eyes stopped at his swollen cheek. "Wait till your aunt sees you." "She probably won't even notice," Evan said glumly. He picked up the bucket by the handle. "What are we going to do with this stuff?" "We'll take it back to the toy store tomorrow," Andy replied, taking long strides across the lawn to the house. "Huh? That's what we'll do. We'll simply take it back." Evan didn't think it was such a hot idea, but he didn't have the strength to argue about it now. He watched Andy disappear into the house. Then he headed slowly back to Catherine's, his head throbbing, his stomach aching. Creeping along the wall of the house, he slipped into the garage through the side door to hide the bucket of monster blood. Sliding it behind an overturned wheelbarrow, he realized that the bucket was full to the top. "But I gave Andy a big hunk of it," he thought. The bucket had been only 2/3 full. "I'll have to find a bigger place to put it," he decided. "Tonight. Maybe there's a box or something in the basement." He crept into the house, determined to clean himself up before seeing Catherine. She was still busy in the kitchen, he saw, leaning over the stove, putting the last touches on dinner. He tiptoed up the stairs and washed up, unable to do much about his swollen red cheek. He changed into a clean pair of baggy shorts and a fresh t-shirt and carefully brushed his hair. As they sat down at the dining table, Catherine's eyes fell on Evan's swollen cheek. "You been in a fight?" she asked, squinting suspiciously at him. "You're a little roughneck, aren't you? Just like your father." Chicken was always getting into scrapes, always picking on boys twice his size. "I wasn't exactly picking on them," Evan muttered, spearing a chunk of beef from his stew with his fork. All through dinner, Catherine stared at his swollen cheek. Spearing a chunk of beef from his stew with his fork. But she didn't say another word. "She doesn't care if I'm hurt or not," Evan thought miserably. "She really doesn't care. She didn't even ask if it hurts." In a way, he was grateful. He didn't need her getting all upset, making a fuss because he was in a fight. Maybe calling his parents in Atlanta and telling them. Well, she couldn't call his parents. She couldn't use the phone since she couldn't hear. Evan downed his big plate of beef stew. It was pretty good, except for the vegetables. The silence seemed so loud. He began thinking about his problem, the monster blood. Shouldn't he tell Catherine about it? He could write down the whole problem on the yellow pad and hand it to her to read. It would feel so good to tell someone, to have an adult take over the problem and handle it. But not his Aunt Catherine, he decided. She was too weird. She wouldn't understand. She wouldn't know what to do, and she wouldn't care. Andy was right. They had to carry the stuff back to the toy store. Give it back. Just get rid of it. But in the meantime, he had to find something to keep it in. Evan waited in his room until he heard Catherine go to bed. a little after 10 o'clock. Then he crept down the stairs and headed out the garage. Chapter 18. It was a cool, clear night. Crickets sent up a relentlessly curtain of noise. The black sky glittered with tiny specks of stars. The round beam of light from the flashlight in his hand darted across the driveway, leading Evan to the dark garage. As he entered, something scuttled across the floor near the back wall. Maybe it was just a dead leaf, blown by the wind when I opened the door, he thought hopefully. He moved the flashlight unsteadily, beaming it into the overturned wheelbarrow. Then the light darted across the garage ceiling as he bent down, reached behind the wheelbarrow, and pulled out the bucket of monster blood. He moved the light to the center of the bucket and gasped. The green substance, mention, was quivering up over the top. It's growing much faster than before, he thought. I've got to find something bigger to hide it in just for tonight. The bucket was too heavy to carry with one hand, tucking the flashlight into his armpit. He gripped the bucket handle with both hands and hoisted the bucket off the floor. Struggling to keep from spilling it, he made his way into the dark house. He paused at the door to the basement steps, silently setting the heavy bucket down on the linoleum floor. He clicked the light switch on the wall. Somewhere downstairs, a dim light flickered on, casting a wash of pale yellow light over the concrete floor. There's got to be something to put this stuff in down there, Evan thought. Hoisting up the bucket, he made his way slowly, carefully down the steep, dark stairway, leaning his shoulder against the wall to steady himself. Waiting for his eyes to adjust to the pale light, he saw that the basement was one large room, low-ceilinged and damp. It was cluttered with cartons, stacks of old newspapers and magazines, and old furniture and appliances covered in stained yellow bedsheets. Ew. Something brushed his face as he stepped away from the stairs. He uttered a silent cry and, dropping the bucket, raised his hands to swipe at the thick cobwebs that seemed to reach out for him. They clung to his skin, dry and scratchy as he frantically pulled at them. He suddenly realized it wasn't the web that was moving against his cheek. It was a spider. With a sharp intake of breath, he brushed it away, but even after he saw the insect scuttle across the floor, he could still feel its prickly feet moving on his face. Moving quickly away from the wall, his heart pounding now, his eyes searching the open wooden shelves, hidden in the shadow against the far wall, he stumbled over something on the floor. Oh! He fell headfirst over it, throwing his hands forward to break his fall. A human body! Someone lying there under him. No, calm down, Evan, calm down, he instructed himself. He pulled himself shakily to his feet. It was a dressmaker's dummy he had stumbled over, probably a model of Catherine when she was younger. He rolled it out of the way as his eyes searched the shadowy room for a container to store the monster blood. What was that long, low object in front of the work table? Moving closer, he saw that it was an old bathtub, the inside stained and peeling. It's big enough, he realized, and quickly decided to store the green gunk inside it. With a loud groan, he hoisted the bucket onto the side of the old tub. His stomach muscles were still sore from the punch he had taken, and the pain shot through his body. He waited for the aching to fade, then tilted the bucket. The thick green substance rolled out of the bucket and hit the tub bottom with a sickening soft plop. Evan set the bucket aside and stared down at the monster blood, watching it ooze, spreading thickly over the bottom of the bathtub. To his surprise, the tub appeared nearly half full. How fast was this stuff growing? He was leaning over the tub, about to make his way back downstairs when he heard the cat screech. Startled, he let go of the side of the tub just as Sarah Beth leapt onto his back. Evan didn't have time to cry out as he toppled forward over the edge of the tub and into the thick green gunk. Chapter 19. Evan landed hard on his elbows, but the thick monster blood softened the fall. He heard the cat screech again and pad away. He sank into the ooze, his arms and legs flailing, trying to lift himself away. But the sticky substance was sucking him down, pulling him with a surprising force. His whole body seemed to be held by it, stuck as if in cement, and now it was quivering up, bubbling silently, rising up to his face. I'm going to suffocate, he realized. It was trying to choke me. The warmth of it spread across his body, invaded his chest, his legs, his throat. I can't move. I'm stuck. It's trying to choke me. He pulled his head up just as the green gunk began to cover his face. Then he struggled to twist his body, to twist himself around in it. With great effort, panting loudly, hoarse cries escaping his open lips, he pulled himself up into a sitting position. The green substance rose up even higher, as if it were reaching up to him, reaching to drag him back down into it. Evan gripped the side of the tub with both hands, held onto it tightly, and began to force himself up from the clinging, pulling ooze, up from the strange force that seemed to be drawing him back with renewed power, up. No, he managed to scream as the warm green ooze slid over his shoulders. No. It was gripping his shoulders now, sliding around his neck, sucking him down, pulling him back into its sticky depths. Down, down. It's got me, he realized. It's got me now. Chapter 20. Don't mind me. You guys seen anything with them yet? I think they're just chilling. I think they like Goosebumps. A little something to make them feel alive again. Chapter 20. No, Evan screamed aloud as the green gunk bubbled up to his neck, pulling him down. No, try again, up, up. Yes. Gripping the sides of the tub, he was moving upward, pulling himself, hoisting himself, straining with all of his strength. Yes, he was beating it. He was stronger than it was. One more tug and he would be free. With a relieved sigh, he dropped over the side of the tub onto the cool basement floor and lay there, pressed against the damp concrete, waiting to catch his breath. When he looked up, Sarah Beth stood a few feet away, her head cocked to one side, her yellow eyes peering into his, an expression of supreme satisfaction on her dark, feline face. The next morning, after a fitful, restless sleep, Evan brought the pad of yellow-lined paper and a marker to the breakfast table. Well, well, Catherine greeted him, placing a bowl of shredded wheat in front of him. You certainly look like something the cat dragged in, she laughed, shaking her head. Don't mention cat to me, Evan muttered. He shoved the bowl of cereal aside and pointed to the pad in his hand. Don't let your cereal get soggy, Catherine scolded, reaching to push the bowl back to him. You get more vitamins that way, and it's good roughage. I don't care about your stupid roughage, Evan said moodily, knowing she couldn't hear him. He pointed to the pad again and then began to write, scribbling quickly in big black letters. His writing caught her interest. She moved around the table and stood behind him, her eyes on the pad as he wrote his desperate message. I have a problem, he wrote. Don't we all? I need your help. The bathtub downstairs is overflowing with green monster blood and I can't stop it. He put down the marker and held the pad up close to her face. Looking up at her from the chair, seeing her pale face in the morning sunlight as she leaned over him in her gray flannel bathrobe, Catherine suddenly looked very old to him. Only her eyes, those vibrant blue eyes running quickly over his words, seemed youthful and alive. Her lips were pursed tightly in concentration as she read what he had written. Then, as Evan stared eagerly up at her, her mouth spread into a wide smile. She tossed back her head and laughed. Completely bewildered by her reaction, Evan slid his chair back and jumped up. She rested a hand on his shoulder and gave him a playful shove. "Don't kid an old woman," she exclaimed, shaking her head. She turned and headed back to her side of the table. "I thought you were serious. I guess you're not like your father at all. He never played any dumb jokes or tricks. Chicken was always such a serious boy." "I don't care about Chicken," Evan shouted, losing control, and tossed the pad angrily onto the breakfast table. His aunt burst out laughing. She didn't seem to notice that Evan was glaring at her in frustration. His hands tightened into fists at his sides. "Monster blood, what an imagination!" She wiped tears of laughter from her eyes with her fingers. Then suddenly her expression turned serious. She grabbed his earlobe and squeezed it. "I warned you," she whispered. "I warned you to be careful." Ow! When he cried out in pain, she let go of his ear, her eyes glowing like blue jewels. "I've got to get out of here," Evan thought, rubbing his tender earlobe. He turned and strode quickly from the kitchen and up to his room. "I knew she wouldn't be any help," he thought bitterly. "She's just a crazy old lady." "I should pull her down to the basement and show her the disgusting stuff," he thought, angrily tossing the clothes he had worn yesterday onto the floor. But what's the point? She'd probably laugh at that too. She isn't going to help me. He had only one person he could rely on, he knew. Andy. He called her, punching in her number with trembling fingers. "Hi." "You're right," he said, not giving her a chance to say anything. "We have to take the stuff back to the store." "If we can carry it," Andy replied, sounding worried. "That hunk of monster blood you gave me, it outgrew the coffee can. I put it in my parents' ice bucket, but it's outgrowing that too." "How about a plastic garbage bag?" Evan suggested. "You know, one of the really big lawn bags. We can probably carry it in a couple of those." "It's worth a try," Andy said. "The stuff is so disgusting. It's making all these sick noises, and it's really sticky." "Tell me about it," Evan replied gloomily, remembering the night before. "I took a swim in it." "Huh?" You can explain later," she said impatiently. "The toy store opens at 10, I think. I can meet you in the corner in 20 minutes. "Good deal." Evan hung up the phone and headed to the garage to get a plastic lawn bag. Andy showed up with her plastic bag wrapped around the handlebars of her BMX bike. Once again, Evan had to go along beside her on foot. His plastic bag was bulging and so heavy he had to drag it over the sidewalk. He couldn't lift it. The tub was nearly full to the top. He told Andy, groaning as he struggled to pull the bag over the curb. "I'm afraid it's going to burst out of this bag." "Only 2 blocks to go," she said, trying to sound reassuring. A car rolled by slowly. The driver, a teenager with long black hair, stuck his head out the window, grinning. "What's in the bag? A dead body?" "Just garbage," Evan told him. "That's for sure," Andy muttered as the car rolled away. Several people stopped to stare at them as they entered town. "Hi, Mrs. Winslow," Andy called to a friend of her mother's. Mrs. Winslow waved, then gave Andy a curious stare and headed into the grocery. Andy climbed off her bike and walked it. Evan continued to drag his bulging bag behind him. They made their way to the next block, then started to cross the street to the toy store. But they both stopped short in the middle of the street and gaped in shock. The door and window of the store were boarded up. A small hand-printed sign tacked to the top of the door read, "Out of business." Chapter 21. What do you guys think is going to happen? Desperate to get rid of the disgusting contents of the garbage bags, Evan pounded on the door anyway. Come on, somebody open up. No reply. He pounded with both fists. Silence. Finally, Andy had to pull him away. The store's closed, a young woman called from across the street. It closed a few days ago. See, it's all boarded up and everything. Very helpful, truly, Evan muttered under his breath. He slammed his hand angrily against the door. Evan, stop, you'll hurt yourself, Andy warned. Now what? Evan demanded. Got any more fantastic ideas, Andy? She shrugged. It's your turn to come up with something brilliant. Evan sighed miserably. Maybe I could give it to Catherine and tell her it's beef. Then she'd chop it up with that knife she's always carrying around. I don't think you're thinking too clearly right now, Andy said, putting a sympathetic hand on his shoulder. They both stared down at the garbage bags. They appeared to be moving, expanding, and contracting as if the green globs inside were breathing. Let's go back to Catherine's, Evan said, his voice trembling. Maybe we'll think of something on the way. Somehow they managed to drag the monster blood back to Catherine's house. The sun had gotten high in the sky as they headed to the backyard. Evan was drenched with sweat. His arms ached, his head throbbed. Now what? He asked weakly, letting go of the bulging lawn bag. Andy leaned her bike against the side of the garage. She pointed to the big aluminum trash can next to the garage door. How about that? It looks pretty sturdy. She walked over to it to investigate. And look, the lid clamps down. Okay, Evan agreed, wiping his forehead with the sleeve of his t-shirt. Andy pulled off the lid of the big can. Then she dumped in the contents of her bag. It hit the bottom with a sick, squishy sound. Then she hurried to help Evan. It's so heavy, Evan groaned, struggling to pull the bag up. We can do it, Andy insisted. Working together, they managed to slide the monster blood from the plastic bag. It rolled out like a tidal wave, sloshing noisily against the sides of the car, raising up as if trying to escape. With a loud sigh of relief, Evan slammed the metal lid down on top of it and clamped the handles down. Whoa, Andy cried. They both stared at the can for a long moment, as if expecting it to explode or burst apart. Now what? Evan asked, his features tight with fear. Before Andy could reply, they saw Catherine step out of the kitchen door. Her eyes searched the backyard until she spotted them. Evan, good news, she called. Glancing back at the trash can, Evan and Andy came hurrying over. Catherine was holding a yellow piece of paper in her hand, a telegram. Your mother is coming to pick you up this afternoon, Catherine said, a wide smile on her face. I think Catherine is glad to get rid of me, was Evan's first thought. And then, dismissing the thought, he leapt up and whooped for joy. It was the best news he'd ever received. I'm out of here, he exclaimed after his aunt had returned to the house. I'm out of here. I can't wait. Andy didn't appear to share his joy. You're leaving your aunt a nice little surprise over there, she said, pointing to the trash can. I don't care. I'm out of here, Evan repeated, raising his hand for Andy to slap him a high five. She didn't cooperate. Don't you think we have to tell someone about the monster blood or do something about it before you leave? But Evan was too excited to think about that now. Hey, Trigger, he called, running to the dog's pen at the back of the yard. Trigger, we're going home, boy. Evan pulled open the gate and gasped. Chapter 22. We're getting close, you guys, finding out what's gonna happen. Trigger. The dog that came bounding toward him looked like Trigger, but the Cocker Spaniel was the size of a pony. He had doubled in size since the day before. No! Evan had to hit the dirt as Trigger excitedly tried to jump on him. Hey, wait! Before Evan could get up, Trigger began barking ferociously. The huge dog was already past the gate and thundering across the backyard toward the street. I don't believe it, Andy cried, raising her hands to her face, staring in shock as the enormous creature bounded around the side of the house out of sight. He is so big. We've got to stop him. He might hurt someone, Evan cried. Trigger, come back. Still off balance, Evan started to run, calling frantically. But he stumbled over Andy's bike and fell onto the trash can. No, Andy shrieked, looking on helplessly as the metal can toppled over, with Evan sprawled on top of it. The can hit the driveway with a loud clang. The lid popped off and rolled away. The green gunk poured out. It oozed away from the can, then stopped and appeared to stand up, quivering, making loud, sucking sounds. It righted itself, pulling itself up tall. As the two kids stared in silent horror, the quivering green mass appeared to come to life, like a newly born creature pulling itself up, stretching, looking around. Then, with a loud sucking sound, it arched upwards towards Evan, who was still sprawled on the toppled can. Get up, Evan, Andy cried. Get up, it's going to roll right over you. Chapter 23. No! Evan uttered an animal cry, a sound he had never made before, and rolled away as the quivering green ball bounced toward him. Run, Evan, Andy screamed. She grabbed his hand and pulled him to his feet. It's alive, she cried. Run! The monster blood heaved itself against the garage wall. It seemed to stick there for a brief second, then it peeled off and came bouncing toward them with surprising speed. Help! Help! Somebody please help! Screaming at the top of their lungs, Evan and Andy took off. Scrambling as fast as he could, his legs weak and rubbery from fear, Evan followed Andy down the driveway toward the front yard. Help! Oh, please help us! Evan's voice was hoarse from screaming. His heart thudded in his chest. His temples throbbed. He turned and saw that the monster blood was right behind them, picking up speed as it bounced across the yard, making disgusting, squishing noises with each bounce. Plop, plop, plop. A robin pulled at a worm in the grass, didn't look up in time. The trembling green mass rolled over it. Oh, Evan moaned, turning back to see the bird sucked into the green ball, its wings flapping frantically. The bird uttered a final cry, then disappeared inside. Plop, plop, plop. The monster blood changed direction, still bouncing and quivering, and leaving white stains on the grass like enormous round footsteps. It's alive, Andy screamed. Her hands pressed against her cheeks. Oh my God, it's alive! What can we do? What can we do? Evan didn't recognize his own terrified voice. It's catching up, Andy screamed, pulling him by the hand. Run! Gasping loudly, they made their way to the front of the house. Hey, what's happening? A voice called. Huh? Startled by the voice, Evan stopped short. He looked to the sidewalk to see the Bamer twins, matching grins on their beefy faces. My favorite punching bag, one of them said. He raised his fist menacingly. They took a few steps towards Evan and Andy. Then their grins faded and their mouths dropped open in horror as the gigantic green mass appeared, heading down the driveway, rolling as fast as a bicycle. Look out, Evan screamed. Run, Andy cried, but the two brothers were too startled to move. Their eyes bulging with fear, they threw their hands up as if trying to shield themselves. Plop, plop, plop. The enormous ball of monster blood picking up speed as it bounced forward. Evan shut his eyes as it hit the twins with a deafening smack. Ow, no! Both brothers cried out, flailing their arms, struggling to pull themselves free. Help us, please help us! Their bodies twisted and writhed as they struggled, but they were stuck tight. The green gunk oozed over them, covering them completely. Then it pulled them inside with a loud, sucking pop. Andy shielded her eyes. Sick, she muttered. Oh, so sick. Evan gasped in helpless horror as the Bamer brothers finally stopped struggling. Their arms went limp, their faces disappeared into the quivering gunk. The sucking sounds grew louder as the two boys were pulled deeper and deeper inside. Then, the monster blood bounced high, turned, and started back up the drive. Andy and Evan froze, unsure of which way to head. Split up, Evan cried. It can't go after us both. Andy returned his frightened stare. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Split up, Evan repeated shrilly. But, Andy started. Before she could say anything, the front door of the house burst open and Catherine stepped out onto the stoop. Hey, what are you kids doing? What's that? She cried, gripping the screen door, her eyes filling with horror. Picking up speed, the giant ball bounded toward the stoop. Catherine tossed up her hands in fright. She stood frozen for a long moment as if trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Then, leaving the front door wide open, she spun around and fled into the house. Plop, plop. The monster blood hesitated at the front door. It bounced in place once, twice, 3 times as if considering what to do next. Evan and Andy gaped in horror from across the lawn, trying to catch their breath. A wave of nausea swept over Evan as he saw the Bamer twins, still visible deep within the quivering glob, faceless prisoners bouncing inside of it. Then suddenly the monster blood bounced high and hurtled up the stairs of the stoop. No, Evan screamed as it squeezed through the open doorway and disappeared into the house. From the middle of the yard, Andy and Evan heard Catherine's blood-curdling scream. It's got Aunt Catherine, Evan said weakly. Chapter 24, a little short one. A couple short ones. Evan reached the house first. He had run so fast his lungs felt as if they were about to burst. What are you going to do? Andy called, following close behind. I don't know, Evan replied. He grabbed onto the screen door and propelled himself into the house. Aunt Catherine, he screamed, bursting into the living room. The enormous glob filled the center of the small room. The Bamer twins were outlined in its side as it bounced and quivered, oozing over the carpet, leaving its sticky footprints in its path. It took Evan a few seconds to see his aunt. The bouncing hunk of monster blood had backed her against the fireplace. Aunt Catherine, run, Evan cried, but even he could see that she had nowhere to run. Get out of here, kids, Catherine cried, her voice shrill and trembling, suddenly sounding very old. But Aunt Catherine, get out of here now, the old woman insisted, her black hair wild about her head, her eyes, those blue penetrating eyes, staring hard at the green glob as if willing it away. Evan turned to Andy, uncertain of what to do. Evan's hands tugged at the sides of her hair. Her eyes wide with growing fear as the seething green glob made its way steadily closer to Evan's aunt. Get out, Catherine repeated shrilly. Save your lives. I made this thing. Now I must die for it. Evan gasped, too. Had he heard correctly? Have we heard correctly? What had his aunt just said? The words repeated in his mind, clear now, so clear and so frightening. I made this thing. Now I must die for it. The aunt did this. Did you guys see this coming? I've read this before and I still didn't see it coming. No! Oh, sorry, chapter 25. No! Gaping in horror as the sickening glob of monster blood pushed toward his aunt, Evan felt the room tilt and begin to spin. He gripped the back of Catherine's armchair as pictures flooded his mind. He saw the strange bone pendant Catherine always wore around her neck, the mysterious books that lined the walls of his bedroom, Sarah Beth, the black cat with the glowing yellow eyes, the black shawl Catherine always wrapped around her shoulders in the evening. I made this thing. Now I must die for it. Evan saw it all now, and it began to come clear to him. Evan pictured the day he and Andy brought home the can of monster blood from the toy store. Catherine had insisted on seeing it, on studying it, on touching it. He remembered the way she rolled the can around in her hands, examining it so carefully, moving her lips silently as she read the label. What had she been doing? What had she been saying? A thought flashed into Evan's mind. Had she been casting a spell on the can? A spell to make the monster blood grow? A spell to terrify Evan? But why? She didn't even know Evan. Why did she want to frighten him, to kill him? Be careful, she had called to him after handing the blue can back. Be careful. It was a real warning. A warning against her spell. You did this, Evan shouted in a voice he didn't recognize. The words burst out of him. He had no control over them. You did this. You cast a spell, he repeated, pointing an accusing finger at his aunt. He saw her blue eyes shimmer as they read his lips. Then her eyes filled with tears, tears that overflowed onto her pale cheeks. No, she cried, no. You did something to the can. You did this, Aunt Catherine. No, she cried, shouting over the sickening grunts and plops of the mountainous ball that nearly hid her from view. No, Catherine cried, her back pressed tightly against the mantelpiece. I didn't do it. She did. And she pointed an accusing finger at Andy. Ooh. Plot twist. Chapter 26. Andy, what do you guys think of that? Well, I mean, let's find out immediately, I guess. Andy? Was Aunt Catherine accusing Andy? Evan spun around to confront Andy, but Andy turned too. And Evan realized immediately that his aunt wasn't pointing at Andy. She was pointing past Andy to Sarah Beth, the cat. Standing in the doorway to the living room, the black cat hissed and arched her back, her yellow eyes flaring at Catherine. She did it. She's the one, Catherine declared, pointing frantically. The enormous glob of green monster blood bounced back, retreated a step as if stung by Catherine's words. Shadows shifted inside the glob as it quivered, catching the light filtering in through the living room window. Evan stared at the cat, then turned his eyes to Andy. She shrugged, her face frozen in horror and bewilderment. Aunt Catherine is crazy, Evan thought sadly. She totally lost it. She isn't making any sense. None of this makes sense. She's the one, Catherine repeated. The cat hissed in response. The glob bounced in place, carrying the unmoving Bamer brothers inside. Oh, look, Evan cried out to Andy as the black cat suddenly raised up on its hind legs. Andy gasped and squeezed Evan's arm. Her hand was as cold as ice. Still hissing, the cat grew like a shadow against the wall. It raised its claws, swiping the air, its eyes closed, and it became consumed in darkness. No one moved. The only sounds Evan could hear were the bubbling of the green glob and the pounding of his own heart. All eyes were on the cat as it rose up, stretched and grew, and as it grew, it changed its shape, became human. With shadowy arms and legs in the eerie darkness, And then the shadow stepped away from the darkness, and Sarah Beth was now a young woman with fiery red hair and pale skin. Is she me? And yellow eyes, not me. The same yellow cat eyes that had haunted Evan since he'd arrived. The young woman was dressed in a swirling black gown down to her ankles. She stood, blocking the doorway, staring accusingly at Catherine. "You see, she's the one," Catherine said quietly now, and the next words were intended only for Sarah Beth. "Your spell over me is broken. I will do no more work for you." Sarah Beth tossed her red hair behind a black cloaked shoulder and laughed. "I'll decide what you will do, Catherine." "No," Catherine insisted. "For 20 years you have used me, Sarah Beth. For 20 years you have imprisoned me here, held me in your spell, but now I will use this monster blood to escape." Sarah Beth laughed again. "There is no escape, fool. All of you must die now. All of you." Dang, Sarah Beth. Chapter 27. "All of you must die," Sarah Beth repeated. Her smile revealed that she enjoyed saying those words. Catherine turned to Evan, her eyes reflecting her fear. 20 years ago, I thought she was my friend. I was all alone here. I thought I could trust her, but she cast a spell on me, and then another. Her dark magic made me deaf. She refused to let me lip read or learn to sign. That was one way she kept me her prisoner. "But Aunt Catherine," Evan started. She raised a finger to her lips to silence him. "Sarah Beth forced me to cast the spell on the can of monster blood. She had warned me that I was allowed no guests, you see. I was her slave, her personal servant for all these years. She wanted me all to herself, to do her evil bidding. When you arrived," Catherine continued, her back still pressed against the fireplace mantel, "she first decided to scare you away, but that was impossible. You had nowhere to go. Then she became desperate to get you out of the way. She was terrified that you would learn her secret, that you would somehow free me of her spell. So Sarah Beth decided that you had to die." Catherine's eyes fell. She sighed. "I'm so sorry, Evan. I had no choice, no will of my own." She turned her eyes to Sarah Beth. "But no more, no more, no more. As I plunge myself into this ghastly creation, Sarah Beth, I will end your spell. I will end your hold over me." "The children will still die," Sarah Beth said quietly, coldly. "What?" Catherine's eyes filled with fury. "I will be gone, Sarah Beth. You can let the children go. You have no reason to do them harm." "They know too much," Sarah Beth replied softly, crossing her slender arms in front of her, her yellow eyes aglow. "We've got to get out of here," Evan whispered to Andy, staring at the seething green glob. "But how?" Andy whispered back. "Sarah Beth is blocking the doorway." Evan's eyes darted around the small room, searching for an escape route. Nothing. Sarah Beth raised one hand and drew it toward her slowly, as if summoning the green glob. It quivered once, twice, then moved obediently in the direction of her hand. "No, Sarah Beth, stop," Catherine pleaded. Ignoring Catherine, Sarah Beth gestured with her hand again. The green gunk bubbled and rolled forward. "Kill the children," Sarah Beth commanded. The enormous glob picked up speed as it rolled across the carpet toward Evan and Andy. "Let's rush the door," Evan suggested. To Andy as they backed up away from the rolling monster blood. "She'll never let us pass," Andy cried. "Kill the children," Sarah Beth repeated, raising both hands above her head. "Maybe one of us can get by her," Evan cried. "It's too late," Andy shrieked. The bouncing, pulsating green glob was just a few feet away. We're going to be sucked in," Evan screamed. "Kill the children," Sarah Beth screamed triumphantly. Chapter 28. We've only got a few pages left. Do you guys think they'll make it this time? I don't know. The glob rolled forward. Evan sighed, feeling all hope sink. Frozen in place, he felt as if he weighed 1,000 pounds. Andy grabbed his hand. They both closed their eyes and held their breath and waited for the impact. To their surprise, the monster blood emitted a deafening roar. Huh? Evan opened his eyes. Andy, he saw, was staring at the doorway beyond Sarah Beth. The monster blood hadn't roared. Trigger, Evan cried. The huge dog bounded into the doorway, its deafening bark echoing off the low ceiling. Sarah Beth tried to get out of the dog's way, but she was too late. Thrilled to see Evan, Trigger enthusiastically leapt at Sarah Beth and pushed her from behind. Under the weight of the gigantic paws, Sarah Beth staggered forward, raising her hands as she collided with the monster blood. There was a wet smack as Sarah Beth hit the surface of the green glob, then loud, disgusting, sucking noises. Her hands hit first. They disappeared quickly. And then Sarah Beth was in up to her elbows, and then the glob seemed to give her a hard tug, and her body hit the surface. Then her face was pulled in, covered over. Sarah Beth never uttered a sound as she was pulled inside. Whimpering with joy, completely unaware of what he had done, the dog loped into the room and headed for Evan. Down, boy, down, Evan cried as Trigger happily leapt at him. And as the dog jumped, he began to shrink. Trigger, Evan called in astonishment, reaching out to hold the dog. Trigger didn't seem to notice that he was changing. He licked Evan's face as Evan held on tightly. In seconds, Trigger was back to normal, Cocker Spaniel size. Look, the glob is shrinking too, Andy cried, squeezing Evan's shoulder. Evan turned to see that the green glob was rapidly growing smaller. As it shrunk, the Bamer brothers fell to the floor. They didn't move. They lay face down in a crumpled heap. Their open eyes stared lifelessly. They didn't appear to be breathing. Then one blinked. The other blinked. Their mouths opened and closed. Oh, one of them uttered a long, low groan. Then, pulling themselves up, slowly, they both looked around the room, dazed. The trapped robin had also fallen to the floor, chirping furiously as it flapped its wings wildly and fluttered about the room in a panic until it found the open living room window and sailed out. Andy held on to Evan as they stared at the monster blood, expecting Sarah Beth to reappear too. But Sarah Beth was gone, vanished. The monster blood shrunk to its original size, lay lifeless, inert, a dull green spot on the green carpet, no bigger than a tennis ball. The Bamer brothers stood up uncertainly, their eyes still reflecting terror and confusion. They stretched as if testing their arms and legs, seeing if their muscles still worked. Then they scrambled out of the house, slamming the screen door behind them. It's over, Catherine said softly, moving forward to put an arm around Evan and Andy. Sarah Beth is gone, Evan said, holding Trigger tightly in his arms, still staring at the tiny wedge of monster blood on the floor. And I can hear, Catherine said, jubilantly, hugging them both. Sarah Beth and her spells are gone for good. But as she said this, the screen door swung open and a shadowy figure stepped into the living room doorway. Chapter 29, our final chapter. Mom, Evan cried. No more bad guys. He set down Trigger and hurried to greet her, throwing his arms around her in a tight hug. What on earth is going on here? Mrs. Ross asked. Why did those two boys come bursting out like that? They look scared to death. It's a little hard to explain, Evan told her. I'm so glad to see you. Trigger was glad too. When he finally had finished jumping up and down and whimpering, Catherine led Evan's mom to the kitchen. I'll make some tea, she said. I have a rather long story to tell you. I hope it isn't too long, Mrs. Ross said, glancing back questioningly at Evan. We have a 4 o'clock plane to catch. Mom, I think you'll find this story interesting, Evan said, flashing Andy an amused look. The two women disappeared into the kitchen. Andy and Evan dropped down wearily onto the couch. I guess you're going forever, Andy said. I mean, to Atlanta and everything. I'd like to, write to you, Evan said, suddenly feeling awkward. Ooh, a little crush maybe? Yeah, good, Andy replied, brightening. And my dad has a phone credit card. Maybe I could get the number and, call you? Yeah, great, Evan said. Could I ask one small favor? Andy asked. Yeah, sure, Evan replied, curious. Well, it's going to sound strange, Andy said reluctantly, but can I have the little bit of monster blood that's left? Sort of as a memento or something? Sure, okay with me, Evan said. They both turned their eyes to where it had come to rest on the carpet. Hey! Andy cried in surprise. It was gone. Any guesses where it went? Well, you guys, such a good one. So many of you guys love this book, Monster Blood. So happy we got to read this together. If you stuck through all the videos and you've been supporting me, thank you so much. Let me know if anything weird happened that I didn't notice with my dolls. And the next book that I'm going to be reading, like I said at the beginning, is Attack of the Jack-o'-lanterns, because I think that's such a really, really good one for Halloween, because it takes place on Halloween night. So stick around for that. This one should come out on the 1st of October. Hello, welcome October. Happy Halloween season. Let me know what you're going, if you're dressing up, if you're going to a Halloween party, if you still trick or treat. I don't know who's watching this. What is your costume this year? Or if you don't know, what are your contenders? I have a lot. I have 2 Elvira looks. I have Raven from Teen Titan. I have Spider-Man. I have Chucky. I have one of the nurses from Silent Hill. What else do I have? I know there's more. Jennifer Check, the cheerleader costume. There's more, I know for sure, but I'm still trying to decide which one I'm for sure going to be on Halloween night. I think Elvira. But I would love to hear what you guys have planned for Halloween, whether that's a costume, going out, a party. What are you doing this month? What's happening this month? It's our month, you guys. And thank you so much again for being here on my nightstand horror hour. I am your friendly e-witch, the wicked witch of the web, and I will see you again soon. Have a good night, you guys.